All right, so for those of you who were absent on the day of Section 2, which was Friday, April 12th, or those of you who are in a class where you are going to have lectures this way, today I'm going to go through a couple things. There's a couple vocab terms you need to know to understand this section. So just in review, we talked yesterday about the use of cotton and how items during the Industrial Revolution increased how we used cotton and made these things work better, for whether it was the spinning it, so the spinning wheel and things past the spinning wheel, or the cotton gin. All of these things improve our lives today and still have effects on us today. So today we're going to look at a couple of things. So as you are listening today, write down the things you see on a piece of paper. If you need more time, I'm going to go fairly quickly. If you need more time, go ahead and pause your video and write them down. Please, if you're on a Chromebook, do not write on the Chromebook. Sit at a desk and write on the table. We do not need marks on the Chromebooks. So today, a couple defining characteristics of the Industrial Revolution that you need to know to be competent in this area. The first is the division of labor. So we talked about this yesterday, assembly line style, where every person does one job. They only do one job. Yesterday we talked about Dairy Queen, how when I worked at Dairy Queen, I only did one thing, because you can do one thing faster than you can do 5 things altogether. The second is mechanization. That just means machines doing everything. We see this today. That's why it's so important. You get a skill, because you can no longer just do grunt labor and get paid a lot for it, because machines can do it cheaper. And the same thing starts to develop during the Industrial Revolution. Third is mass production, or making things on a very large scale. And into that goes, it's very similar to the division of labor, and without one, you cannot have the other. And then finally, one of the other characteristics of the Industrial Revolution is energy from fossil fuels, and you saw those characteristics when we talked about pollution, some of the effects from yesterday. Before we move on to your writing activity today, 4 vocab terms you need to know. The first is the Rhode Island system. So as work systems began to be developed, the question was, who is going to work? How are they going to work? And this first system, which you see right at the top here, is the Rhode Island system. And obviously, it's the person who started this was from Rhode Island. These were done in the Rhode Island area. So families were called to factories to work together. So instead of just one person going, we could not go, for example, even simply 10, 15 miles a day back and forth. That was too far on horseback. We didn't have the types of things we needed to do that. So people had to live very close, but people couldn't afford. So they said, bring your whole family and you can work here. The second is the Lowell system. This is where women who were single or widowed, they'd work in factories together. And, that was a way of getting people who didn't have anybody else. They could have a way to support themselves, and otherwise they wouldn't have had a way to support themselves because they're widowed. And most of the time the men would work and the women would be at home taking care of children. If you don't have children, or if you're widowed and old, this would be a way that you could support yourself when otherwise you wouldn't have been able to. And the last 2 terms you need to know today to complete the activity is unions. And a union is just a group of workers who join together and they demand more rights. So like teachers have unions. Like I told the other classes, Miss Boffman supports the teacher union, or represents, the teacher union for this middle school. And she communicates with them and makes sure everybody gets what they need. And these were developed during the Industrial Revolution. And then finally, one of the last things a union will do if they don't like something is go on strike. And that just means that you don't do what your employer wants you to do and you refuse to come to work. It's always a last resort, but it is always in the tool belt if a union or if a group of workers do not like the way they're being treated. So all 4 of these today, you're going to be looking at a primary source. It is available on Classroom as 12.2. I think it says Lowell Evaluation. But in it, you're going to be reading a rule book that Lowell used in one of his factories and the things they went through. So you're going to answer part 2, 3, and 4 of the paper I handed out in class. If you were absent, ask me for it and I'll give it to you. You need to make sure you answer parts 2, 3, and 4 with about 4 to 5 sentences each. And that's going to be on paper. So if you're on a Chromebook, make sure you're not writing on the Chromebook, but writing on a binder, something else, a desk, but not my Chromebook. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me. And I'm going to continue to upload these as we go through the rest of the semester here. So this was 12.2, talking about the changes in working life.